The morning mist hung heavy over Lexington, Massachusetts. April 19, 1775, dawned cold and clear. A palpable tension gripped the small village green. 77 men, farmers and shopkeepers stood assembled. They were militiamen, citizen soldiers answering the call to defend their liberties. Facing them stood a column of British regulars sent from Boston to disarm the rebels. A shot rang out. Its echo seemed to reverberate across the countryside. To this day, no one knows for sure who fired first. What is certain is that the volley of musket fire that followed marked a point of no return. 8 colonists lay dead, 10 wounded. The British marched on to Concord, unaware they had ignited a revolution. News of the fight spread like wildfire. Farmers grabbed their muskets, blacksmiths sharpened swords. The American Revolution had begun. The fight for liberty had begun with a single shot. It would be a long and bloody struggle. But on that day, a new nation stirred. The world would never be the same. For years, tensions had been simmering between Great Britain and her American colonies. The seeds of discontent were sown in the wake of the French and Indian War. Victory in that conflict came at a steep price for the British Crown. Parliament, facing a mountain of debt, looked to its colonies for increased revenue. A series of acts, each one received with growing resentment in America, followed. The Stamp Act, with its tax on legal documents, ignited protests. The Townshend Acts levied duties on essential goods like tea. The colonists, accustomed to self-government, chafed under these impositions. They argued for representation in Parliament, their cries of no taxation without representation echoing through the halls of power. Each act of defiance further strained the relationship. The Boston Massacre, a clash between British soldiers and colonists, left 5 Americans dead. The Boston Tea Party, a brazen act of defiance against the Tea Act, saw chests of tea tossed into the harbour. The chasm between colony and crown widened. The stage was set for a momentous clash. With the clashes at Lexington and Concord, war became inevitable. Militiamen from across the colonies converged on Boston, laying siege to the British garrison. The Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia, tasked with the daunting responsibility of governing a nation at war. Debate raged within the halls of Congress. Moderates argued for reconciliation, clinging to hopes of peace. Others, like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, recognized the need for a clean break. On July 4, 1776, Congress took a momentous step. It adopted the Declaration of Independence, a document that boldly proclaimed the colonies as free and independent states. Penned by Jefferson, the Declaration articulated the fundamental rights of man life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It declared that governments derived their just powers from the consent of the governed. With these words, a new nation was born. The world watched in awe as 13 colonies dared to challenge the mightiest empire on earth. In the face of British military might, the Continental Army seemed a ragtag collection of farmers and shopkeepers. Yet from this crucible of war emerged leaders of extraordinary courage and vision. At their head stood George Washington, a Virginia planter chosen to lead the Continental Army. He was a man of unwavering resolve, quiet dignity, and an unshakable belief in the cause of liberty. Washington knew his army was outmatched. The British possessed superior firepower, training, and resources. His strategy, therefore, was one of attrition and inspiration. He sought to avoid costly defeats, preserve his army, and wear down the enemy's will to fight. The early years of the war were a brutal test of Washington's leadership. Defeats outnumbered victories. New York City fell to the British. The Continental Army suffered through a demoralizing winter at Valley Forge. Yet through it all, Washington held his army together. He understood that the fight for America's soul hinged not just on battlefield victories, but on the resilience and spirit of his men.